Hello and welcome to Murder Analysed. I'm Christina Moore. Now today this case is part 3 of the Moores murders case. So we've done part 1, we've done part 2 and now this is part 3. Okay, so if you haven't watched 1 and 2 you should watch them before you watch this one and it will all make sense. So we're going to recap I think on part 2 because that was mainly about the victims. Okay, that was about all the 5 victims that we know of that they have murdered, and it also describes their murder, so how they planned it, the dates and times when they were taken and the methods of the kill, and all this sort of thing was in part 2. Also that we sort of then introduced certain bits of the trial and stuff, and then now we're going to go on to the trial. We're now going to go on to Brady and Hindley in prison, and then we're going to go on to like the aftermath, you know, what happens to the families and stuff like that. And so I hope you find this part interesting. Okay, so anyway, the trial of both of this pair of serial killers, Brady and Hindley, was in April 1966. Now the prosecution's main witness was then David Smith, because don't forget David Smith comes into this quite a lot. Okay, so that was their prosecution witness. So there was a witness they had, and the only witness they had, to tell you the truth. And they had now, by this stage, found 2 bodies. So they had found John Kilbride's body, and then they had found Leslie Ann Downs' body. Now, how they found Leslie Ann Downs' body was that a young neighbour, Pat Hodges, lived next door to Hindley and Brady, and they used to take her up onto the moors. They didn't kill her because they couldn't have, because they would have been caught. She was very close, but they used to take her up onto these moors, and she then told the police certain areas where they would take her, and then had the film, you know, the photographs of it. And these photographs then became quite a good part in the evidence because they were significant, because what they did, and as most people do when they take photos of either the murder victim or something else, that it's to remember them by. So what was found out then through Pat Hodges is that Hindley and Brady would then go up to the moors, sit and have photos on the graves or near the graves in the area where they had buried these children. So these photographs were so specific. So when they looked at the photographs, because this is what not that Pat Hodges knew anything, she was only a young child, but she knew the areas of where they would frequent up on this moor, because this moor is massive. Okay, so they used these photographs to find areas where they thought these bodies was buried, and then they subsequently found John Kilbride and Leslie Ann's Downs body there. That's how they were found. I don't think if it hadn't have been for Pat Hodges sort of giving them this idea that maybe this is why they were going there, you know, the police, I don't think these bodies would have been found, because it's so difficult on this moor to find anything. But anyway, these were 2 and Brady in this court now giving their version, you know, of what happened. I think Brady was up there on the stand for 8 hours, and I think Hindley for 6. But when it came to Edward Evans's murder, he sort of said, well, you know, I did kill him, but I wasn't the only one to kill him. So he sort of implicated then David Smith in that murder. And so really, at the same time as this trial was going on, David Smith was then also the prosecution's main witness. Now he's been implicated by Brady on the stand as being part of the murder as well of Edward. And now there's some questions over him, because when it's found out that he's been now taking money from the press, because at the time this media coverage on this case was massive. Okay, and you know, the press have a right, and they do, and they pay you for stories and this, that and the other, but usually when you're a prosecution witness, it's not the best idea to take that money, because are you then giving your evidence for a financial gain, or are you doing it because it's the truth? Okay, and I think also that David Smith also then used to go up the moors with these pair, so that then people started thinking, hang on a minute, and then society, because the society at the time was so enraged with these couple, you know, we've had the bulletproof glass put up to protect them, but now you've got this David Smith taking money, I think, from the News of the World, about £1,000, I think, a month, and so much a month, and then £1,000, and then that, which was a lot of money. Now, when you're talking about 1966, okay, so, and it's funny that saying about the press, because my sister's husband, his father, worked for Fleet Street at that time, and actually worked on this case. You know, so I've heard a lot of things about what happened within this trial from that. Unfortunately, he's now passed away. But, you know, he was saying about this trial, of how this trial affected people, right? Not only inside the trial itself, but on the outside in the public arena. It was, you know, these people were hated. And so was then David Smith, and also Myra Hindley's sister, Maureen, absolutely hated. They were attacked over this, and then people thought it was absolutely terrible that this man would take money. You know, he should have just given this evidence. But, you know, that was what was going around at that time. So this case and this trial was, you know, quite toxic, and really could have exploded at any time. People were not happy with what was going on at this trial. So anyway, we get back to the trial. So on this stand, they've done that, and then the jury has come back within about 2 hours, I think, and with guilty charges. Now, don't forget, as I said before, the hanging now was took off the table. It's now been abolished. These are now going to spend time in prison. Now, I think Brady got 4 life sentences, and Hindley got 2 life sentences with 7 years for something else. So with usually when you have a life sentence, there's tariffs put on these sentences, okay? With Brady, there was no tariff put on it. So it was where he then could really apply for parole or something later down the line. Them tariffs were not put on his, but on Hindley's, they were. I think it was 15 years or 20 years at the time. And subsequently over the years, that went up and down up for Hindley. So anyway, they've now been convicted, and they then go to prison. I think he went to Durham prison, and and she went to Holloway. Okay, so there was, you know, this. Now, with any trial that you feel, I suppose, you know, you want to take it to appeal for some reason or another, and they must have had a reason. Brady actually did never appeal his trial, his sentence. He actually wanted to stay in. Okay, he never wanted to be released. One, I think, for fear, because he knew what was going to happen to him if he ever got out. But Hindley, literally from the day after the murder trial in 1966, she then continued to appeal right the way through her life spent in prison. Okay, so that's what she did there. So there we look at in 1985, I think Brady did admit, okay, he admitted to the murders of Pauline and Keith, right? So don't forget, these are the 2 bodies that haven't been found yet. So that's because, don't forget, in court they pleaded not guilty. So, you know, this evidence was still being looked at and looked at and looked at. And in 1986, Winnie Johnson, which was Keith Bennett's mother, wrote to Hindley, wrote to, you know, I think twice she wrote to Hindley, and I think Hindley then actually did in 1986 actually reply to her, and then that's when Hindley, I think in 1987, done this 17-hour statement on her version, where she actually did confess and stuff to to all the murders, but never said that she was actually there. You know, she was always in the bathroom, or she was in the car, or she was, so they knew it was a very well planned out statement. Okay, it wasn't true. So when Brady sort of hears about this, he sort of says, well, I'll tell you the full story, but you know, I want something in return, because remember what Brady's like. He likes to be in control and have something in return. And he asked to have access to something that he could commit suicide with. All right. Well, that was never going to be granted by anybody, you know, and it was very, very strange request, but because they knew he wasn't going to grant it, he knew that. But it was just another way of keeping him in the press, you know, this, that, and the other. Now, at this time also, that you had Hindley now trying to go for these appeals. Now, don't forget, she's never really admitted. You know, she went not guilty. Then she's done this statement where she's put out that, yes, you know, 17-hour statement. Okay, yes, I was involved, but I actually didn't kill him, even though there is actually contradictory evidence to show that you did. But she would never admit it. But this was all part of Hindley's plan to be released on parole. All right, because in any country where we have sentences, if you don't admit to your crimes, you can't be then paroled. Okay, so in her mind, she you know, she knows this. She's not stupid at all. So if anything, she's probably the most calculated person you'd ever meet. So anyway, she's in this prison and she's continually going for these parole, you know, trying to get parole, trying to even get to it, and constantly being denied. Okay, so her 20 years is up, and then finally, I think, she starts to then admit certain things. But with Winnie's letter, they say that it affected her in some way. I don't believe that. I think what it did is it gave her the publicity she was after, to try and get, because don't forget, 20 years has gone on now. A lot of people have forgot, or so she thinks have forgot about this murder. So she's trying to influence public opinion of her. So then they say, well, you know, we need to find these bodies because we still haven't found Pauline and we still haven't found Keith. We need to find these bodies. So then she says, I'll go to the moor and I'll help you find them. So they took her to the moor on 2 occasions, to these moors. But then over 20 years, things have changed, not that much. And also, was she really trying to find these bodies? Because, you know, there's evidence then now. We've got, you know, good evidence now that we can find out what's happened to these kids if we can find these bodies. So what she's done is that she's gone to the moor once, and a big public outcry on this. It was shocking, really, you know, helicopters flying overhead because people still want to kill these pair, okay? Then she's gone again later on to the moors because she's come back and thought, oh, I think it may be there. So they took her back to the moor again at great expense and stuff. And also then that night, I think she stayed in a hotel under guard and everything else. But, you know, she's out and about doing her thing. And they don't find anything, right, from her. But she does sort of point them in the right directions, I think, right? But this moor is so hard to, you know, how, you know, they spent this much time up on this moor in these certain areas. She would have known where their bodies were. But again, could be there, it could be there, you know, talking about a lot. So really, you're looking now at 100 days now. So she's gone now back to prison and the search continues for these bodies, okay? So 100 days have gone past and they're continuing to search. Now, on the 100th day, I think it was about 100 yards from where they had found Leslie Ann Downing's body, that they found Pauline Reed's body. Okay, so they did find her body. I think that was 1987 when they found her body. So years, okay, years have gone by and they've now found this body. So they've now found Pauline Reed. So the one outstanding now is now Keith Bennett, who still hasn't been found, the 12-year-old third victim. Okay, he has wrote to the Bennett's mother and he has said that he would like to help find this body, but he can't because the police won't allow him to help search. You know, he would specifically say where this body is. So in the end, I think again he goes twice to the moors, again under a lot of security, you know, and again the public are not happy with this, and again no bodies are found. Okay, they can't find Keith's body. I don't think he was that helpful, but you know, he said he tried again to win over at some public opinion, and also because Myra Hindley had also done it, and he thought, oh, I'm going to do this as well. Okay, so it was I think in July actually when they found of 1987 when they found the body of Pauline. Anyway, in 2009 the Greater Manchester Police said that they had really exhausted all chances really, and so unless there was new evidence brought in, like fresh evidence or some other form of evidence that could contribute to trying to find Keith Bennett's body, they would have to call off the search, okay, until a time when it came up that they could then look in specific places. I think the manpower and the searches over the years have not found anything, and because neither of these two have actually given a specific area of where this boy could be buried. Okay, so there was that. So in 2017, the police asked, though, that by court order, because remember, I think in part 2, I talked about the suitcase that was found with the pictures in it and the video camera, you know, the audio tape and the pornographic photos and everything else in this locker in Manchester Central Station. But there was also 2 locked briefcases, okay, with that, which weren't opened and stuff, and they were then now still the property of Ian Brady. So the police would have had to have got a court order to have opened these suitcases. Okay, so in 2017, I don't know why this wasn't done before. I don't know. Maybe they wasn't allowed them. Maybe they wasn't searched. Maybe it was just packed away with his stuff when they've done their searches, and they've done their search, and whatever they didn't find on that day, that was it. You know, a search doesn't go on and on and on for years. And so these things were then packed away, and this is still now Ian Brady's property. But there's now 2 briefcases that the police feel that there could be some information in there that could find this boy's body, right? Now, unfortunately, in 2017, Ian Brady died anyway, but the court then said no, they cannot, on the grounds really that they can't release it, they can't do it under court order because there will be no prospect of a conviction, okay? So that then failed, right? There's going to be no likely result of anything coming from that in regards to any prosecutions, but not in regards to these briefcases may have information in them that we just can't open. There was another person that was also writing to Brady that said that she knew where this body was, and I don't know if this is a person that now holds these briefcases, I'm not sure. But again, they tried to have her arrested and charged with withholding evidence, and that failed. So there was a lot of things going on right up until 2017 to try and find the last, the victim that the body hadn't been found of Keith Bennett. Okay, so again, let's go back to where Brady was in Durham prison, and he was in Durham prison for about 19 years. He went to normal prison, and he chose to spend his time in solitary confinement. Now, you think, oh, poor him, because if he had gone into the public prison or the open prison where the prisoners could have got to him, I don't think he would have lasted very long. and I think he knew that, so he chose solitary confinement, and he stayed in there for about 19 years until then that he was diagnosed with as a psychopath. Okay, and then he was moved then to Ashworth mental security psychiatric hospital, so Ashworth Psychiatric Hospital, and he was there then, and then throughout his time in there, he tried then to go on hunger strikes, but because now you're in a psychiatric hospital and you're under mental health and you're under Section 3 of the mental health, you can't go on hunger strike. Like, you can't refuse your medications, you can't do a lot of different things, because you're not sane enough, or you haven't got the capacity to make that decision. So that's why they force-fed him and kept him alive, and he actually didn't die until, I think it was the 15th of May 2017 when he finally died, and that was the end of him. Now Hindley, a bit of a different kettle of fish, Hindley, when you look at her. Now Hindley went to prison, normal prison, as a category Class A prisoner. That means that she was then, under tight security and stuff as a category A prisoner. Again, though, she did not go into solitary confinement. Okay, she went into a standard prison format, and where she sort of, became one of the top girls, because even in the prison they have hierarchies, and she was a very manipulated person. She was, not scared. Remember that years ago that she had done a judo and she had done all this, plus this girl's a murderer. Okay, so she didn't have any fault, and she would have protected herself without a doubt. And so she stayed in normal prison and stayed there actually until she died. But what happened to her in prison, of course, these appeals that she then tried to get fouled. We had the Secretary of State that would then up the tariff on prisoners like that from like 20 years to 30 years to 40 years, and that, so every time she would try and go for this appeal, she was then not allowed. She then did start having some relationships in there, and I think she broke off in 1971 any contact with Brady, okay, because she fell in love, right? So she fell in love with a woman called Patricia Cairns. Now, she worked at the prison as an officer, and previous to that, she was a minister, that sort of thing, religious minister. And she then went to work in this prison, and then Myra and this Patricia then formed this relationship, and went on for quite a few years. So this then was again released to the public, and also this, in them days I think it went on, but I don't think it's allowed now. I wouldn't have thought so. And also because this Patricia and Myra and another prisoner and someone on the outside also then tried to help Myra Hindley escape from prison. Okay, so now their plan was, when they've escaped from prison, was that they was going to move countries to Africa and then go and work for a missionary and look after children. Now, we have a child killer, we have someone that has worked in a religious organisation, and was a minister, then come into the prison service, then had a relations with Myra Hindley in the prison itself, and now is trying to help her escape to move then to a African country where they can now live in a commune with children. Okay, right, so this is Myra Hindley. This is how she can manipulate, and she manipulated and manipulated all her life, right? All her life. So finally, after that, or I think on November 2020, Myra Hindley died of, I think, pneumonia. Okay. Now, there's a few things with her death, because the law leading up to her death was changing a little bit. We had human rights, and we have different people coming in and saying that, trying to change the laws because, is it right that we keep people in prison indefinitely? Well, I think it depends on the prisoner, and it depends, on your faults. But, and everyone then can go through the process of parole and whatever else they've got to do to get out. But I think in the end, because also at the time, just before she tried to escape, Hindley was downclassed from an A class category to a B class category, right, prisoner. That meant that she would then go out on day trips to Hampstead Heath. So she's on Hampstead Heath now in London, on a day trip. So because as a category B prisoner, you are then being, reformed back into society. So it's about reforming her. It's about making sure that she can fit into society as society's changed over the years. And so these day trips were about that. So that's what was happening to Myra Hindley. She was out on day trips, and not many people know that, but she was. But then again, the public then found out, and also when she tried to then escape, she then went back to a category A prisoner. Okay, so that sort of was Myra Hindley's history. I think in 1993, I'm going to have to say this because I love Trevor McDonald, and I bet loads of you know about Trevor McDonald. He was a newsreader here for years, and now he does documentaries and he does things on crime and stuff, and I just love Trevor McDonald. And he done a show a little while ago on a documentary on Myra Hindley and Rose West, because they were now in the same prison, right? So now that you only got one serial killer there who is a manipulator and wants the attention, you've now introduced, now in the 90s, Rose West to this prison. Now people thought, oh my God, and the prisoners thought, oh my God, what's going to happen here? Well, actually they ended up having a relationship, a sexual relationship, and it lasted about 6 to 8 weeks. But you've got two people here who are consumed with their own self, okay, manipulators, and in the end, actually, once it over, they never ever spoke again, ever spoke again. So if you get a chance, watch his show. It's really good. So I do love Trevor McDonald. But anyway, let's go back. So when she died, 15th of November 2002, about 15 or 16 funeral homes refused to bury this woman, right? I think none of her family attended her funeral. There's about 11 people, some of her supporters that tried to get her out and stuff. But as I say, at that time also, the law was changing a little bit anyway on how we could keep these prisoners in prison without giving them a chance of parole, okay? So the tariffs then were changing, all right? And I think in the end, if she had lived, Myra Hindley would have got out, right? And she would have been given a new identity, because she would have had to have, but she probably would have got out. She was manipulating the system that much, and she had the supporters that much, that in the end, the law couldn't have stopped her. So we had these Home Secretaries at the time trying to stop her, but then the House of Lords said, that's really not your job, that's really our job, and that's how then the laws were changing, okay? And I believe that if it had gone on longer, if she hadn't have died when she did, sooner or later this woman would have been released from prison, okay? And I still don't think, even at her age of when she was going to be released, that this woman would have been safe. She would no way have been safe. She would have mixed with people that she could have manipulated, and something else would have happened. I don't care how old she is, something would have happened. So anyway, let's talk about now Pauline Reed. So they found her body in 1987. Now, Pauline Reed had a lovely family. She was a lovely girl. But the death of a child on families can change people. Now, Pauline Reed's mother was then admitted to, I think it was at Springfield Mental Health Hospital in Manchester. And, she just had a mental breakdown. I think the pressure and stuff on her was just too much. And then they found the body in 1987 at that funeral of her daughter Pauline, and she was under heavy sedation as well, to attend that funeral. But she did attend, okay, she did attend, and I don't think she ever got over it. Okay, she never ever got over it. Edward Evans, there's no family now living with Edward Evans, and his body was of course found there and then, and I think that's what, so they had an ending to that, and they could then bury their son, and they moved on with their life, and no one now is alive to do with I think of what I can find on Edward Evans. Okay, but then we have the mother and the campaigner, and I call her a campaigner because she was Leslie Ann Downing's mother was an amazing woman, okay, because she'd gone through a lot. Remember, she's the one that had to listen to this 17-minute audio tape, and they did find her daughter, Leslie Ann Downing, and she was the one that knew exactly what had happened to her child, because she had the photographic proof of it, she had the audio sound of it, and I think this did affect her all her life. But what it made her do was campaign to have Myra Hindley, remain in prison. Okay, and she fought and fought and fought for that. So any time this Myra Hindley would put something out there was talk of her even trying to get parole, Leslie Ann Downing's mother was there in force and to stop it. So 5 years after the murder of John Kilbride, Sheila and Patrick Kilbride divorced. Now this happens a lot of times when we have someone that's murdered, and I get you're trying now to cope with life. You are trying, then one blames each other, and they have nothing to blame each other for. No one has any blame here apart from Myra Hindley and Ian Brady. All right, but you've lost someone, so grief and loss can cause a lot of damage. And then we move on to Keith Bennett's mother. Now, she continued to visit Saddleworth Moor right up to her death in 2012. Okay, because she believed that that's where her son was buried. All right, murdered or buried, but she just knew, she said, that he was buried there. And she would go up to this moor, search this moor when she was younger, sometimes just stand there to be with her son, okay? And she is the one that wrote letters both to Myra Hindley and also to Ian Brady to beg them for some information on her son, okay? She died without ever finding her son. And as today, in 2020, Keith Bennett's body has never been found. And again, because the search and there's no new evidence they can get to find this body, I think his brother and others continue to try and help search. You have agencies and people have donated money to help search, and this boy has never been found. So this has been, right, the Moors murders. It has been a 3-part series on this murder, and I've tried to give you as much information as I can on these murders. And also, I think the thing is that the reason why people like me do, channels like this or write about things like this is because I don't think any of these murders should be forgotten, right? We can learn something from these murders, and I think we have, really. Over the years the laws have changed, and over the years we have got better. We've got more CC cameras and now and things, but these crimes still happen, okay? They can still happen. So I really hope that you found this case interesting, and I wish at some point that Keith Bennett's body is found so they can put him to rest. And for all the other children that were murdered in here, now they're at rest. Both perpetrators are now deceased, and so this case is really where it comes to an end. So thank you for watching, and until the next time, bye bye.